An event hosted by the League of Women Voters in Freeport Tuesday shines a light on what some advocates argue is an egregious form of voter suppression, gerrymandering.
The event featured Ryan Tolley, executive director of the nonprofit group Change Illinois, who gave a presentation on the practice of gerrymandering and how ending it is how organizers say we can restore trust in the election process. Tolley says gerrymandering is an issue that tends to get lost in the context, but adds it's something voters still care about.
We want to make sure that people who are living day-to-day lives in these communities has real impacts on their lives, and they'd better be served by a process that wasn't just trying to entrench political power.